Hi everybody. I thought today I would just spend a few moments with you all by way of a response to yesterday's video presentation by Dr. Ricky, where Dr. Ricky is talking at length, and I mean at length, for an hour and 40 minutes or so about the mechanisms around some of the causes of atherosclerosis, leading to atherosclerosis, leading to, CVD, heart disease, that kind of thing. The first comments I need to make about the video posted by Dr. Ricky are along the lines of a repeat of my challenge to Dr. Ricky to come forward, to identify himself, and to provide us, by which I mean me, in confidence, with his medical registration number. The reason being that there is very good, very high-level evidence to suggest that Dr. Ricky is in fact an imposter, does not exist, in fact, as an actual person, but is indeed a character, is indeed somebody else, most likely, who is masquerading as a medical doctor. Anywho, I have once again issued the same challenge that Dr. Ricky should come forward. I have once again invited Dr. Ricky to have a debate with myself on camera regarding these issues. Dr. Ricky has not come forward, and neither has Dr. Ricky agreed to round 2 of a discussion with me on camera. Make of that what you will, boys and girls, ladies and gentlemen, attack helicopters, tuna sandwiches, Lego trains, diesel locomotives, and anything else that I forgot that any of you have ever told me that you identify as. So that's the first thing. Okay, first of all, we need, I think, for our own surety about who it is that's talking to us online, I think we are entitled to some indication that Dr. Ricky, in fact, exists and is, in fact, a doctor. Interestingly enough, during my exchanges online over on Dr. Ricky's channel yesterday, after he posted this video, one of the devotees, one of the supporters of Ask Yourself and of Dr. Ricky, and also assumably a VG devotee as well, on the basis of the comments that were made, said person did actually provide a proposed identity for Dr. Ricky, did supply the full name of a person who is a practicing family MD in Ontario, Canada, and did supply that person's registration number. I do have that on record, of course. That will be going into calculations around, how things pan out in terms of all of this, and we can then check into that and see if that person is or is not Dr. Ricky, should we require the need to do that at any point. Anyway, all of that preamble aside, let's deal with the actual video posted. Initial commentary about the video itself. I have to say that the information provided in that video, that 1 hour and 40-minute video, at large, on the whole, is remarkably good, actually. The information is very solid in terms of its correctness. It's reasonably well researched, apparently. The way that Dr. Ricky is talking about the information as he goes through his slides is indicative of someone that's done a fair amount of research recently into this area, but it doesn't actually smack to me of the kind of verbal patterns, discussion patterns, speech patterns that you would in general get from someone who actually did understand the material well and actually who was a medical practitioner. Or indeed, if I'm wrong in that respect and Ricky does exist and Ricky is actually a family MD, it perhaps wouldn't be that surprising either, because a family MD is not a specialist in the pathophysiology of atherosclerosis, and so stumbling a bit and kind of on a few things and struggling with the information a bit to get it across in an accessible fashion to people, wouldn't be that surprising. But I'm still leaning towards this is someone, pretending to be someone they're not. That said, as I say, the information in and of itself are really quite good for the vast majority of the video. And in fact, it seems to be a bit of a red herring, a bit of a goose chase, really, because almost everything in that video I agree with absolutely, entirely, 100% is in line with what I teach and what I have been teaching for at least 15 years. None of it is a reason to actually doubt what I've been saying all along around the fact that low-density lipoprotein cholesterol is not a causal factor in atherosclerosis, heart disease, or any other form of health concern, actually. Except that what we can do basically is distill all the information in that video down, and there's really only 2 points of contention that I have pulled out of it after a quite careful look through the video from start to finish. The 2 points of contention are that Dr. Ricky claims on slide 16 that the native LDL cholesterol in and of itself can be pro-inflammatory, and then refers to, without actually referencing, mind, no reference given, but refers to some supposed research around the native or unmodified LDL as generated by the body or indeed consumed in the diet, whatever. Talks about that being inflammatory via a mechanism with a cell membrane associated protein which is involved in the binding of immune cells to tissues that are inflamed, and it's called the ICAM or ICAM molecule, if you like. The way to think about ICAM is if my fist here is an epithelial cell, the ICAM is like a little hook that sits on the surface of that cell, and then if another different molecule comes along that is designed to latch onto it, then latch it will. So that's what we get. And as such, the research that Dr. Ricky is referring to talks about an upregulation of the expression of the ICAM protein on the cell membranes of the vasculature in response, in direct response to increases in the concentration of native unmodified LDL. So my response to that claim made in the video is as follows. Number one, there is no reference supplied there whatsoever. It's just a statement that has been made saying there's evidence to show this, but the evidence is not actually provided by way of a reference. I have, obviously, knowing quite well what is in the literature and having read a lot of it over many years, I do know what is in the literature. I do believe I know which study or studies it is that Dr. Ricky is referring to there. Largely, they are studies either, there's two studies I've seen, or two groups of studies actually I've seen. One involves the use of a human umbilical vein material as a model, and the other group of papers in this area use either murine or rabbit or other animal models for that purpose. So in as much as talking about external validity to the target cell that we're talking about in the real world, we have a problem. There are clear differences between veins and arteries in terms of the expression of ICAM molecules or ICAM proteins. So, comparing veins with arteries, even in the same individual isn't going to work, let alone using tissues from completely different sorts of organs, umbilical cords versus actual vascular tree epithelial cells in, the living adult human, or indeed completely different species, it's not so good. Anywho, all that aside, that sort of saying, that's not particularly scientific, to then turn around and say that increasing the concentration of LDL-C, even if it is associated with an increase in the expression of ICAM molecules, proteins, that doesn't mean it's pro-inflammatory, okay? The only time that inflammatory type cells are going to bind to an ICAM sitting on a epithelial cell is if that cell is itself activated, and that requires the involvement of various pro-inflammatory cytokines such as interleukins, for example. There are several different classes of these pro-inflammatory mediators that need to be activated before the cell will then actually put its hook out so that it will bind. Okay, so it's like Velcro, if you like. You can't say that half a strip of Velcro would, keep a shirt together. If your shirt was a Velcro shirt and you had one strip of half the Velcro and you didn't have the other, and you were trying to get it to, it's not going to work. For inflammation to occur, you need both sides of the picture to be in play. So that's, a ridiculous non-scientific statement there by Dr. Ricky. It shows that Dr. Ricky doesn't actually understand inflammation, or indeed, if Dr. Ricky does understand, then what Dr. Ricky is doing there is actually, with malice aforethought, on purpose, deceiving his listeners in order to try to suggest that there is a role for native, in other words, non-modified LDL in inflammation and or in atherosclerosis, etc. There isn't. Basically, a short throw-out comment on the bottom of slide 16 saying there's some evidence that native LDL is pro-inflammatory without supplying the evidence or even talking about how that may be so, doesn't cut it, boys and girls. Doesn't cut it at all. That is not a mechanistic description of how the inflammation occurs. I've just given you one in the most basic terms that I can to show that the argument given in the video yesterday just simply doesn't cut the mustard remotely at all. So what we're saying is that for an inflammatory cell, an immune cell, to bind to an epithelial cell to start doing its work there, number one, we need an adhesion molecule on the epithelial cell, and we need a matching adhesive cell, a ligand for the adhesive protein on the epithelial cell. They both need to be activated, ready to go. That requires inflammation. That requires the involvement of pro-inflammatory cytokines. That involves an inflammatory response in the body. And in fact, even if you have a short-term inflammation situation, that is actually not an atherogenic thing, because if that inflammation resolves as per the natural processes that it should do, then we don't have a problem. It's only when LDLs that are oxidized or glycated are bound to the epithelial cells and are not released for a significant period of time that this damage occurs, and that's what instigates the inflammation, and it's that activates and causes the atherosclerosis to begin. It is simply not the binding of inflammatory cells as described in the way that Dr. Ricky has described it. Following on from that, it also turns out that in humans, again, this is why I was talking about why it's very important to make sure that your animal model is externally and internally valid for what you're trying to extrapolate your findings to. That's why animal studies are not good, because in animal studies, the ICAM molecule is highly involved in such processes. In humans, in fact, the ICAM model is not the most important binding protein in terms of the vascular epithelial cells. It is, in fact, a different one called VCAM. And it's actually the VCAM which is highly involved in atherosclerotic lesions in humans, not ICAM at all. So that's another reason to basically go, Dr. Ricky, you got it wrong, pal. You made a big error there. You've tried to pull the wool over people's eyes, and all it takes is an actual scientist who understands actual, pathology that's going on here to come online here and say, you got the wrong protein, pal. It's not ICAM. It's VCAM in humans, and VCAM in the same way needs to be activated via pro-inflammatory cytokines and things like that. And that's there's no evidence that an increase in the concentration or the amount, I should say, of LDL, native LDL floating around has any effect on the expression even of VCAM or indeed of ICAM, as it turns out, in humans. And I've got a study that I will go to support that assertion a little bit later on. So, a couple of studies that I have here that I've just pulled out fairly randomly. There are a number of studies available. I've just gone with these ones because why not? Here are a couple of different studies that talk about the requirement for pro-inflammatory cytokines to activate inflammatory cells before they will bind to the binding proteins that may or may not be expressed on the epithelial cells. You could go to the Journal of Immunology, 1986, Volume 1, pages 245 to 254 for one reference around that. And another reference that you may be interested in is in Nature, number 331, pages 624 to 627, and that's a 1988 paper. So if you'd like to go and have a look at those papers, they clearly outline the requirement for pro-inflammatory cytokines to activate cells before they will bind. That's the part that says you need two sides of the Velcro, one side won't do it, and saying that the addition of one side of the Velcro as a pro-inflammatory artifact is therefore completely false, unscientific, non-mechanistic, and the sort of thing that you'd expect from someone who had an agenda to push and had the will to try and pull over people's eyes. So nice try, Ricky. Epic fail. Wrong in that respect. Native LDL is not involved in the upregulation of any of the binding proteins on human vascular epithelial cells in the arteries, which is where atherosclerosis occurs. The study that I have around that If you'll excuse me for just a moment, I'll grab that for you here. It is Cell Stress and Chaperones, 1997, issue 2, number 2, pages 94 to 103. Let me just quickly read you a little bit from this paper. Very, very interesting. And this is where they have looked at these authors have looked at the expression of the mRNA encoding for the synthesis of the ICAM, the VCAM, and a third actually important binding type protein on human vascular epithelial cells called ELAM. So ICAM, VCAM, and ELAM are the three involved. So basically, the key sentence here is this mRNA expression for those three things, the three different mRNAs, did not change during a further cultivation in serum-free medium and was not further induced by addition of native or oxidized LDL. That's a worry, isn't it? So we're being told by Dr. Ricky, probably from an umbilical cell study, or probably from a rabbit or mouse study, actually more likely, that increasing the concentration of native LDL is associated with an increase in the ICAM molecule, and therefore it's pro-inflammatory. Here's a study in human beings that says, nope, that's not so at all. So sorry, game, set, and match there, Dr. Ricky. You lose again. Epic fail there. In the study that I'm talking about here, they had different classes of oxidation, different levels of oxidation for LDL. They had a native or non-oxidized LDL. They had an oxidized LDL, which was slightly oxidized. They had a moderately oxidized, and they had a highly oxidized form. And neither the native nor the oxidized had any effect whatsoever on ICAM, VCAM, or ELAM expression in human vascular epithelial cells. Only moderately and highly oxidized form of LDL did that. Game, set, and match. Sorry, Ricky, wrong. Okay, so there we go. That's basically that one there. So that said, that was the first major error in the video by Dr. Ricky that I hope should sort it out for you. Just absolutely ridiculous nonsense there, and purely, as I say, it's either a mistake from someone who is completely out of their depth and doesn't know what they're talking about as regards the scientific inquiry around the pathophysiology of atherosclerosis in human beings, or it's someone who is trying to pull the wool over people's eyes to suit their own agenda. Either way, doesn't matter. Either way, what that does is basically destroy completely any credibility that Dr. Ricky may have had by posting what is otherwise a quite good video, as I said, in terms of some of the mechanisms around it, etc., etc. So that was point one. Point two, later in the video, Dr. Ricky talks about, he makes the admission basically that actually it's modified LDL that is involved in the atherosclerotic process. It's still not causal, it's involved. Native LDL, not at all, only modified. And as such, he talks about the forms of modification of LDL, and he talks about glycation as one. That's the sugar associated one. He talks about oxidation, which is the oxygen form. He talks about carbamo, which is another form again. And then he has several different forms of the different things that can alter the LDL molecule and then make it so that it's pro-atherogenic. And he includes in that list bound LDL, in other words, native LDL that is bound to the vascular epithelial cells. Okay, that's just ridiculous. Bound is not altered. Bound can be released. it's not in the same category. It's another attempt to obfuscate the need to prove his positive standpoint in the first instance, which was that LDL is an important causal contributor to atherogenesis, atherosclerosis, heart disease. It is not, and he's used a couple of really bad, really obvious, really massive either errors or indeed malicious misstatements, lies is another word for them, in order to try and convince you of his point, and he's hidden those two massive errors in amongst a bunch of other information which is otherwise good. And he's done that in an attempt to try and save face and to try and provide some credibility to a position which actually inherently has none. So that is my response to the Dr. Ricky video. They are the references that I have provided with you today in order to dispel the mythology put forward by so-called Dr. Ricky yesterday. I hope this was useful to you. If people do have any questions about the pathophysiology of atherogenesis and they would like to talk to someone like myself who actually does understand this thing and knows how it works and will not lie to you about how this works and will actually stay within the disciplines of science and what it has established and what it hasn't, will not use invalid models from invalid tissues or invalid species, will not claim things that are bound are therefore altered, then obviously I'm the man to talk to about that. A good place to talk to me is there. That's a really good place to come and get consultancy on any number of issues around nutrition, health and fitness, exercise, planning and execution, preparing yourself for any given events, be those physical in nature or indeed in terms of body composition, for aesthetic purposes or whatever else. They are all areas in which I am highly expert, along with pathophysiology, general physiology, general health, and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, I'm not an MD, but I do have significant scientific knowledge and experience in all the areas that I've just outlined above. And I have instigated a new tier in my patron site this week. It's a $50 a month tier. That's the one that you will need to subscribe to if you want to see me for consultation, really, and that will be by way of Skype appointment. You can have up to 2 hours a month, give or take. I'm not going to cut you off dead at 2 hours if we're into something important or whatever. I'm also not going to let you bank time, fair enough. Otherwise, it could get out of hand on me. So that's what's on offer over there. So get yourselves over there and get registered for that. And then what I'll be doing in days to come is I'll be putting an electronic calendar up online where you can actually book yourself in at a time that suits you, and then I can come online at that time and we can have a Skype discussion about whatever it is that concerns you or whatever it is that you want some advice on, and that will be my absolute pleasure. So that's where we're going with that. Stick around. This week there is still a lot of things going to be happening as planned if everything comes together. Early in the morning, tomorrow morning my time, I'm going to be having an online chat with Jonathan, who is a very popular YouTube personality. His site is all around exercise and health and fitness and that kind of stuff. So I'll be talking with Jonathan about 1 o'clock in the morning, tomorrow morning my time. So be it. I live in New Zealand. That's the way it is. So yeah, stick around for that. And also a Friday afternoon USA time, early Saturday morning my time. That's when the plan to talk with Dr. Gareth Davis, or Dr. Darth Vader, or whatever he wants to call himself. That'll be happening. That will be providing that there's no urgent surgery or anything that he's called away to do on that afternoon. Shouldn't be too much of an issue because he's actually an administrator these days, more so, and an active surgeon less so, I'm told, by him. But anyway, that's the plan. Friday afternoon, USA time, Saturday morning, my time here, as in, wee small hours. So that's when that's going to be happening. So that's the plan for that. And finally, also, this week I will be posting my video where I will be going through the functioning of mitochondria in some detail, including what's good for your mitochondria, what's bad for your mitochondria, and that will also round out and become, as well as a video in its own right, it will become part 4 of the how to avoid chronic inflammation series of videos that I've been promising to do part 4 on for some time. So that's this week as well. So that's what you have to look forward to. I hope this video has been informative. I hope it's been useful. I hope you now understand the difference between a genuine senior academic in pathophysiology of atherosclerosis and indeed one of either a crackpot charlatan MD with no actual specialization in the area who's able to do a bit of research and come online and make himself look a bit silly, actually, or indeed someone masquerading as a doctor who isn't one at all, in fact, and is able to do a bit of Googling and stuff and can present himself in a way that sounds convincing to the general public, but not to someone who actually has some training in the area, like myself. So there you go. That was my response to the Dr. Ricky video, and I hope that I will see you later in the week for any one or indeed all of those events I've just been talking about. Exciting times, boys and girls. A lot happening. A lot's going to continue to be happening. Things are on the grow. That's the way it should be. It looks like I am definitely not going to be continuing my employment in the apple juice factory. Again, that's for reasons beyond my control, around contractual issues and whatever else. That's the way of the cookie crumbling, or the apple crushing, if you like. There you go. So if you would like to support me in a meaningful way, that's how you can do so. In the meantime, while I continue to build and grow this channel, which I now apparently have a lot more time to do, so I'll be around a lot more. So that's good news for everybody. Well, it's good news for most people, but it's not good news for the charlatans. It's not good news for the ideologues that want to come online and lie to you, boys and girls. It's not good news for them. But for you people that are interested in being educated and learning how things work in the real world, absolutely, I would like to think it's good news and that you would be pleased that I will be around more often. So, see you later in the week. Have a good day.